Going to the Gulf affected your health, gave you more symptoms, and you feel worse. Now, perhaps it's only a lesser finding that there's no particular pattern to these symptoms. There isn't a unique Gulf War syndrome solely associated with going to the Gulf.
This report confirms what many servicemen suspected. It reveals that post-traumatic stress is nearly 3 times as likely among Gulf veterans as in other servicemen, that individual medical conditions such as chronic fatigue and arthritis are twice as likely, and that combinations of physical illness and psychological problems are also twice as likely in Gulf servicemen. The reasons why so many veterans are ill remains unclear, but the report suggests it could be because in the Gulf there were simply more hazards. The report links the cocktail of vaccines troops were given to their illnesses. The protective suits and tablets against chemical and biological attacks are also highlighted, and exposure to the burning oil wells of Kuwait is identified as an additional risk in the Gulf. Some Gulf veterans have already welcomed the report.
I think it's a great step forward. It confirms what the veterans have been saying for the last nearly 7 years now, that some of them who went to the Gulf were ill and they have had health problems.
Other campaigners are demanding immediate compensation for veterans.
At the moment, in order to get a war pension, they have to have every single symptom diagnosed, and some of them have been to 24 different consultants. This should stop, and there should be an acknowledgement that the guys are ill.
Straighten as hard as you can. Hard, hard.
Now that the questionnaire evidence is complete, a series of physical checks, like this muscle strength test, have begun on veterans. It will take another year before these results are ready. Meanwhile, the government says it welcomes the new report and has committed to funding some of the further research. Sue Saville, ITN.
The prosecutors could only confirm a CJD case after the victim had died.
But the new findings also throw up an alarming discovery. It's emerged that the proteins which spread the disease can't be cleaned from surgical instruments. The government's chief medical officer insisted the risk of catching CJD from surgical equipment was only theoretical. Our health correspondent Helen Wright reports.
This is the scientist who led the team to develop the test, which can identify new variant CJD by analysing tissue taken from tonsils. It works by pinpointing an abnormal protein which triggers the disease in humans and is found in the tonsils before passing to the brain. Professor Collins told me the test may mean that for the first time it's possible to detect the disease before any symptoms develop.
We know from studies that have been done in animals that it may be present as early as a third of the way through the normal incubation period, which in humans suggests that it might be detectable several years before the patients develop signs of the disease.
Families who've lost loved ones to the disease have welcomed the test, which can also confirm it in those showing early symptoms.
But as a mother, I would say I would have welcomed it because it would have taken away the fear of the unknown. We would have been able to plan knowing what the disease was.
But the research also raises worrying questions. Instruments used in tonsil or appendix operations could theoretically pass on the disease because the abnormal protein that spreads it can't be sterilised away. Government experts are considering whether disposable ones should be introduced.
We would want to do that after very careful consideration. I don't think it'll take long, and in certain areas of surgical practice we may be able to introduce more disposable instruments.
The researchers now plan to analyse thousands more tonsil samples to try to get an idea just how many people may be carrying the disease.
This research sheds new light on the development of new variant CJD, but scientists still need to learn much more about the disease. For example, how long its incubation period is and how it's contracted. And it remains the case that there is no treatment or cure. Helen Wright, ITN, at the Imperial School of Medicine.
The fugitive couple on the run with their foster.
The government now says it's considering testing troops.
The government have been looking at how one might want to test for levels of depleted uranium in individuals. What kind of tests would be appropriate? Though testing has not taken place in relation to any individuals, and I will be publishing a paper on that shortly.
Researchers from King's College London found that while there's no specific Gulf War syndrome, Gulf veterans are up to 3 times as likely to be ill as other servicemen. The team says the government must learn lessons about the hazards of war.
In future conflicts, we have to be better prepared for these kind of outcomes. That in future conflicts, better monitoring, better preparation, better surveillance of the after effects must now become mandatory.
Of the 53,000 British servicemen and women who went to the Gulf, 1 in 18 is said to have suffered some subsequent health problems. But while the government says it will fund further studies, it will not give Gulf veterans preferential compensation.
If people are entitled to compensation, then I think they should get that. But it would be wrong if Gulf War veterans were treated in a different way from those who've served the nation in Bosnia or elsewhere, and there has to be a consistency.
The government's promise to help fund further research into Gulf War illnesses means more pieces of the jigsaw may yet come into place. But 8 years on from the conflict, many believe that progress is being made far too slowly. Sue Saville, ITN at the Ministry of Defence.
A short time ago, I spoke to Tony Flint, who fell ill after serving in the Gulf and who's one of the veterans' leading campaigners. I began by asking him what he thought about the latest findings.
Well, this report today only confirms what we've been telling this and the previous government, that they will not find one particular illness with Gulf veterans, but a multitude of illnesses. Whereas with a lot of other servicemen, you may find he'll have post-traumatic stress, he'll have fibromyalgia, he'll have chronic fatigue, or he'll have emphysema. But with the Gulf veteran, he'll have all of these at the same time.
Do you feel, though, at last it has proved that they are taking the syndrome seriously to some extent?
Well, I still do not believe they're taking it serious enough, because Douglas Henderson said this morning that, oh, they're going to do more research. Well, more research means that more Gulf veterans are going to die where we're waiting for treatment.
So how will today's report affect you materially?
Well, all it does, well, you know, I'm very pleased that it has come out just to confirm what, you know, what we have been saying over the last 4 years.
Do you resent how long the whole process has taken?
You know, we just don't know how many more Gulf veterans are going to die. We're dying off at a rate of 1 a week now. And it's, you know, and the government say, oh, it's going to be at least another year, so you're looking on another 50, 60 deaths before they think about doing something else.
Tony Flynn, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
The government's New Year charm offensive shifted away from Westminster today, with the Prime Minister making another push on education and health. He visited a school in Blackburn to promote the government's push to attract more businesses to get involved in education, and he'll visit a hospital in North Wales this afternoon. Andrew Simmons reports.
The Prime Minister was in rain-swept Blackburn, reinforcing his government's initiatives on education. Along with David Blunkett, his Education Secretary, Mr Blair was to announce a second round of education action zones, aimed at helping school children in deprived areas. The number of schools in the scheme is being doubled from 25 to 50.
Progress is only going to become a reality if we all share a vision and make it work together.
Year 320.
The vision here is inspired by British Aerospace, with pupils actually involved in design work. It's called Whiteboard Technology, a giant interactive computer screen linking teachers, pupils and homes to big business.
And this demonstration of whiteboard technology is being relayed throughout the school by the pupils' own TV station. Education action zones are meant to bring schools and big business together as a means of breaking new ground in education. Here, it certainly seems to be working.
But what about other schools crying out for such technology, I asked.
Where we're operating in these education zones, it's making a significant difference to the raising of education standards. But of course it takes some time.
A computer link in every classroom?
We want to see, over the next 2 or 3 years, literally every school in the country wired up to the internet, the computer equipment there, the teachers properly trained to use it.
As Mr Blair left his whiteboard autograph in the classroom of the future, many teachers and education officials elsewhere in the country will be keenly waiting for similar technology to arrive. Andrew Simmons, ITN, Blackburn.
It's time for us to take a short break now.
Still to come on the programme, the £1. Terry Lloyd reports.
3 years on from the environmental disaster, and today the General Manager of the Milford Haven Port Authority arrived at Cardiff Crown Court to face punishment. The authority had admitted one offence of causing pollution. But the effects of the oil spill from the Norwegian supertanker, the Sea Empress, had been catastrophic for the environment, wildlife, the fishing industry and tourism. Shortly after 8 o'clock on the night of February the 15th, 1996, The huge tanker ran aground as it edged its way into port. 72,000 tons of oil spewed out, affecting 120 miles of Welsh coastline. It's estimated 25,000 seabirds were killed, including scoters and razorbills. The beach resorts of Tenby and Saundersfoot were badly affected, and the massive clean-up operation cost over £60 million. The holiday trade suffered, as did the fishing industry. Commercial fishing was banned for 6 months as a result of the polluted seawater. It took almost a week to regain control of the stricken Sea Empress, which created the third largest oil spill in UK waters. The court, which fined the Port Authority a record £4 million, was told how an inexperienced pilot was allowed to board the huge vessel. He failed to keep the tanker in deep enough water as he attempted to come into harbour on low tide. Terry Lloyd, ITN.
The veteran entertainer Sir Harry Secombe has been talking about his fight against prostate cancer. He says he's determined to face the enemy and to try to beat it. The former goon cites the late Roy Castle, who fought a long battle against cancer, as his inspiration. John Brain reports.
My shirt came back tight from the laundry. I'm going tomorrow.
From comedian to crooner, to Christian television presenter.
Hello.
Sir Harry Secombe has been a fixture of light entertainment for more than half a century. But the 77-year-old is now facing his biggest challenge yet, overcoming cancer. Sir Harry was diagnosed as having cancer of the prostate 7 months ago, but until recently kept it a secret. In a candid interview for the programme My Favourite Hymns, to be broadcast on ITV on Sunday, he tells presenter John Stapleton about his determination to fight the illness.
I think you have to face the enemy like Roy Castle did, and look it squarely in the face and say, OK, let's see what we can do about it.
And find, if you can, some determination and some strength to beat it.
A lot of strength from upstairs, yeah. Apart from the strength that Myra gives me, the family give me, that's tremendous as well. But it's because we share a faith. We all believe that there is someone who will help us through it. And prayer is very important at a time like this.
Sir Harry says because of his faith, death holds no fears.
You can put yourself in the hands of God and say, well, if you want me up there for a cabaret, I'm ready.
But this evergreen entertainer intends to carry on for a good few years yet. John Brain, ITN. President Clinton is facing another nail bite.